Reed Hastings, the co-founder and CEO of Netflix, came, and I loved something that he said. He said, "To be a great leader, you gotta be a great person. You gotta become a great person." And so it's something that we strongly believe here in Nexu. If I remember well, we only had like 200K in the bank. At that point, I remember we have an investor that twice told us we were written off their books. So today, Nexu has changed the market. The market won't be the same now after Nexu has had its impact, because now the car sales rep and the car buyer are able to get a credit response in real time. Life is about the person that you become, not just what you achieve.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fintech Leaders, coming to you from New York City. I'm your host, Miguel Armaza, and I'm a co-founder of Gilgamesh Ventures, a venture capital fund that backs early-stage fintech entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to leave a review on Apple or Spotify so more people can learn about fintech leaders. In this episode, I sit down with Abdon Nacif, co-founder of Nexu, the leading auto financing and dealership software platform in Mexico and one of the fastest growing fintech companies in Latin America. Nexu has been profitable for almost 2 years. They have raised almost $200 million in equity and debt from Altos Ventures, Valor, HSBC, Wollef, Combinator, Fintech Collective, Clocktower, and Gilgamesh Ventures. I'm a big fan of Abdon, and I love getting a shot of inspiration after every conversation with him. Not only have I known Abdon for over a decade, but at Gilgamesh Ventures, we have been investors in Nexu for the past 3 years, having a front row seat into their incredible story. In this episode, we discuss developing mental toughness as an entrepreneur, the principles and discipline that led them to build a profitable business at a very early stage, near-death experiences, and a pivotal decision that resulted in a shift of business model, Abdon's leadership philosophy and focus on authentic, selfless leadership, and a lot more. Abdon, welcome to Fintech Leaders. I could not be any happier to have you on for this episode. What's going on in Mexico City?
Thank you, Miguel. It's an amazing Friday morning here in the marvelous Mexico City. We have a long weekend coming up. It's Mexico's Independence Day, so a great feeling, excitement for the weekend. But great to be here.
I'm excited for the audience to learn about all the great things you're doing, the team has been doing for several years at this point. Before we get into all the details about all the great things that are happening at Nexu, tell us about your first board meeting. I understand it didn't go as planned.
Yeah, now it was a long time ago when we had our first board meeting. Yeah, it was supposed to be a regular 2-hour board meeting that ended up lasting, 4 or 5 hours or something, with some awkwardness within. I think that back then we had an investor that in which we weren't too aligned on the expectations of a board meeting and the role that each person should take in the board meeting, right? So, and on the other side, we were young entrepreneurs, Fernando and I, and it was more of a informational board meeting that lasted a long time, informing everybody of what was going on. So we do many learnings from that experience. First off, and now we're blessed with an amazing board in which everybody's aligned towards the vision and mission of the company, right? So, and the role that board members and us as founders and operators need to take on the board. And then second, and very important, today our board meetings are much less informational, right? We try to focus on 2 or 3 important topics for our company. things that are on Fernando and my mind, and where we see that the board members can actually provide value, right? Because of their complementary skills. Furthermore, I think we've also learned to create a close-knit group within our board members. There is a strong connection between them with us, a sense of unity, and that they're here for Nexu more than just for their investment. They're here to help the company build for the long term.
Is it always obvious to you and Fernando what those 2 or 3 topics should be?
It's 1 to 2 or tend to be relatively obvious, right? And things that are happening in the last quarter, the company continues to change, the market continues to change. And then sometimes we may decide, okay, let's bring this third point, which might not be as relevant, but I think it can either provide perspective to the board, or we think that this specific person in the board meeting can provide value.
Let's kind of step back a little bit. You mentioned in your first board meeting you were 2 young entrepreneurs. Why start a company in the first place when you're young? I mean, I know your story very well, and it's not that you were fresh out of college. You had work, both of you had experience, but you were almost fresh out of MBA, I'd say, right? So still quite young. What was the motivation behind it, and is it still the same?
Yeah, so for me, there wasn't any other way, right? For me, I guess it goes back to when you're young, when you're growing up. We have always felt a calling to do something that would improve the lives of people in a meaningful way. I don't know where that comes from. I think it's comes from my upbringing. I grew up in a very small town in the Amazon region of Bolivia. My grandparents were Lebanese. They settled in a cattle town in the northeast part of Bolivia. And I grew up very close and seeing firsthand deficiencies in quality of life, in quality of opportunities. So I also, since I was very young, I've always been felt the level of empathy with people, like authentic empathy, that I can sense the feelings and awareness of how others feel. And also I noticed some talents. So I grew up with a feeling of responsibility to do something about it. So for me, it wasn't a question, "Oh, should I start a company or not?" There was no other way for me. And maybe the impact I wanted to have, I wanted to do it via company because I wanted to control how big it was and control that destiny rather than relying on somebody else. I don't think that starting a company is for anybody. It's not a cool, sexy thing to do, nor glamorous. It's really tough. It pushes you to your limits. You learn a lot through doing it. For me, it's been a growth experience to understand what new things I can do that I thought I couldn't. It's you need a lot more mental toughness, emotional coefficient, more than just intellect. So, and it's tough, especially if you want to build a big company, you're shooting for something big. If you want something with high growth, high impact, that can be global as well, it's really tough. I don't think it's for anybody. I think that whoever starts a company needs to feel this need, this it's like I cannot do this, right? But yeah, that's why we started Nexu.
Is there a way to develop this mental toughness that you've mentioned, or do you just have it? You're born with it?
It's a good question. I think it comes more from development. I think it's you you when you put yourself in tough situations, and you understand that you're going to fear them, but you still want to transcend them and go across them. It is little by little that you start building this confidence that you can get farther than when you thought you could. There is building a company, as I said, it's an emotional roller coaster, and you need to manage it. You learn how to when things are the darkest, how you need to continue to think positive and go back to your long-term goals, to what you believe your purpose is, because that's what you need to transmit to your team. And I don't see any other way than showing positivity to your team.
So speaking of building a company, you're building a fintech company, and I think is truly a fintech because you you have a very heavy side of fin, but you've also built the tech. I think these days everyone is a lot more interesting on the tech side, right? Which is of course important at scale, especially at scale. Tell us about the tech side of Nexu, right?
Yeah, and
What is that secret sauce?
It starts with Fernando and I, right? I'm a software developer by background, and Fernando is an actuarial scientist and expert on risk. So Nexu in its core is a technology, data, and stats company, right? That today offers a very sophisticated financing product. That's who we are, right? We build software and automated platform that automates the entire financing process for car dealers, all the way from when you want to get financing to the delivery of the car, and it's all automated for multiple stakeholders, for the car dealer, the rep, the car buyer. Right? So it's a lot of software built in that it's embedded at the point of sale for car dealers. Right? And then in the back, you have an extremely robust, intelligent, sophisticated credit engine, right? In which we have supervised intelligence for risk scoring, statistical algorithms, predictive income with intelligence. We got a lot of technology that we built in-house for fraud prevention. All of this has been built by us through these years and are part of what, are helping the success of Nexu. In addition, as a fintech that provides financing, we also have a very well-oiled capital markets machine within our platform, right? Where you have multiple providers of financing, purchasers of loan, that everything happens automatically, right? So we built a lot of technology. All the software that we built has been by us.
And maybe help us crystallize this. I think it'll be helpful to understand the buying and financing journey for autos in Mexico, I guess pre-Nexu and post-Nexu. How does it look like today for your customers? And because I think this is going to illustrate what you're saying.
Yeah. So in Mexico, before Nexu existed, you would be a car buyer and walk into a car dealership, and a car sales rep will serve you. They will give you a quote, fixed quote, same quote for everybody. And you submit a paper application for a car loan. And days later, if you're lucky, one day, you get a response. It's a binary response, right? Because one APR, there wasn't much development of product, right? And all the credit algorithms for the banks were with binary decisions, right? And very few people will get approved 3 out of 10. Right? So you would get rejected. You would try to find another car. You would do another application, try to go to another bank. They have very similar policies. So the whole process wasn't good for the car dealer, for the car sales rep, and most specifically for the car buyer. And most importantly, very few people got approved. So when we saw that, and we were a broker online before being a point of sale financing platform at car dealerships, we saw the data. And we saw that there were millions of Mexicans that were credit worthy, and they were not being able to have access to financing, something that is meaningful for their lives, to change their lives or to help them grow their small businesses. So although it was tough because we didn't have experience financing, and we didn't know the floor of the car dealerships or had the relationships that normally banks have with automakers, we intentionally went into the hardest part, which is learn how to finance the people that were not being financed by the banks, and do it in a real-time way. So today, Nexu has changed the market. The market won't be the same now after Nexu has had its impact, because now the car sales rep and the car buyer are able to get a credit response in real time. They know what car a customer can afford. They can close the sale in that moment, and twice the number of people uh, are getting access to financing. It's a huge impact for the country. And it ultimately is impacting the GDP of the country, because even the small businesses, which are the core tissue of the 74%, I think, of the Mexican economy, you're giving them an alternative to grow their business.
What kind of impact are you seeing in terms of numbers, in terms of customers, dealerships? Maybe kind of help the audience understand a little bit of that.
So Nexu started just going to a few car dealerships in Mexico City. And in the last 2 years, it has gone to provide coverage to car dealerships all across Mexico. These are OEM car dealerships. And it's gone to the extent now that we have partnerships directly with to be official platform, official financing partner for them, for their car buyers.
So let's talk about something that many investors are afraid of, is backing companies that provide credits without being deposit holders, right? There's some very big examples of successes all over the world. And there's also maybe even more examples of failures, right? Also across every continent. What do the ones that succeed have in common?
So I think that the critical thing is to be disciplined in how you're financing, in your policies, in the equity that you have, and go through each of the steps that you got to do it depending on your local capital markets to get to very low cost of funding, right? So, for example, I can speak about Mexico, which is where we are, right? So, Mexico is still a developing capital markets, right? In which actually Nexu is being at the forefront of developing it for new companies, right? So we started financing with family offices, then local financial institutions, then US debt providers. And in the past few years, we made the big jump to financing with banks, including local banks in local currency. We are securitizing. So there, you gotta go step by step, understanding what are the requirements, understanding what traction you need to be showing each of these providers to grow. I think that Nexu is helping the market develop as well, as we've shown that with discipline, with the right acquisition channel, with the right product innovation, we can, in a very healthy and sophisticated way, grow while having an impact on customers.
Yeah. And something you mentioned, healthy, I think is important to mention. Healthy also means a healthy company being profitable, right? I think not every Series A, B, C startup can say that. Was that a conscious decision? The onset, when did you realize this was important? And it's funny to ask when you realize a company needs to turn a profit, but in the tech market, it's not always true.
Yes, that's right. There's two reasons of why Nexu is profitable. One is we knew what business we were in, right? And we had to grow as fast as we could, while we knew that we had to hit these milestones to provide financing. That is one. And then second, Nexu wasn't a sexy company at the beginning. We were not able to raise as much equity as we have liked in the beginning for many different reasons, and even from our previous business model, right? So we were put and forced to be in a situation in which we had to do more with less. Okay. Nexu today has much higher annualized gross profits than what we've raised in equity in our history. So, and the culture is built on that. And when you go through so much adversity, People that join you are not here to be throwing money around. Are not here just for the salary. So with that discipline, we found ourselves that about 18 months ago we became profitable. It wasn't a decision based on what was happening on the financial markets. We were on a road to that. Even through we closed a round in 2021 and then closed our Series B in 2023. And Nexus valuation multiplied by 3.3 times just because we were on the path of growth and we did not have to change of a strategy and start being on the defensive side post what has happened in the market in 2022. And it's continued that way today.
Yeah, it's ironic how not being sexy early on forced you to build a healthier company.
Yeah, exactly. And today we're multiplying while being profitable. We're blessed on that.
Maybe for entrepreneurs tuning in, what are some of those fundraising lessons that you've gone through? Because some of your rounds were not so easy, others were more manageable. What did you learn in the process?
Yeah. The most recent ones weren't that stuff. Well, many lessons, right? I think that the biggest lesson is you've gotta learn how to manage the process and talk to investors in a way that you're true to your essence. So it's important that you know when you're starting your fundraising, or at least you have somebody that is going to preempt you for that fundraising, and you try to compress that process to 1 or 2 weeks in which you're talking to potential investors. That is one thing. Then the second one is that this is a process of matchmaking. We don't like no, or we don't like if an investor you think that didn't value the company, but you gotta accept it that it is that it is, and what you're trying to find is that right partner. Today we're blessed with amazing partners which are aligned for the long term of the company. We trust them, they trust us. And if I look back to some of our fundraising processes, I can now be thankful for many of them that said no, because that somehow led us to whoever is today with us. Right? So it's understandable to say no. It's for Latam founders, I think it's important. So Latam, just from where it comes, there's much more value on the equity, on the capital side than on the sweat. Right. So a lot of founders may feel intimidated with investors. I think it's important for founders to know that it's a win-win situation for everybody. And as I said at the beginning, being a founder starting a big company that grows fast is super tough. So good investors value that. And at the end, that you're working super hard to provide them a return, they also provide a value to the company. But at the end, it's the operator, it's the founder that ends up working to make this a success or not, right? So it's important to understand it's a win-win situation for everybody, and it's not somebody that has more power than the other.
How big is the company in terms of people today?
We're about 200 people in it.
About 200. I mean, you've alluded to this, but to get to a team of 200 hasn't been easy. You've had some near-death experiences. It would be great to kind of hear about some of those.
All right, so it's a good question. We've got so many near-death experiences at Nexu. For the first 5 to 6 years, we were many times where there was no light on the other side of the tunnel. When we were in a hole, we thought that we could not get out from. Sometimes about to not have equity, sometimes about not to have debt, sometimes things that were critical market-wise weren't working. Maybe we can talk about when we pivoted in early 2018. Just for the audience as a background, Nexu was an online auto finance broker, right? So we will pay Google and Facebook to get customers online, try to analyze the risk. We understood the policies from the banks and other financial institutions and try to make the process as digital as possible to find your best. For many reasons, that wasn't working as we had expected. It was okay, right? But I don't think that us as entrepreneurs are here. We're here for big things. We're here for great opportunities.
So
So
what was it? Let me ask you, was it not working because of you, the team, or do you think there's something fundamentally flawed about that business model?
there were many things. One is that you were depending on the process innovation, digital innovation, and product innovation from the banks, or from traditional financial institutions, which is very hard to have an impact on. Second, to attract customers, you have a cost of acquisition that you really weren't controlling as you scale because you depended on online, on Facebook and Google, right? And all their different ad mechanisms. And then you received a very small financing commission for the closing of these financings. They had to start. It wasn't anything recurring. Like you had to start from zero every month, right? So economically wasn't as feasible. We were growing, it was okay, but it wasn't as much as we wanted. And we had to make a really tough decision to go do something much harder. When we got it, if I remember well, we only had like 200K in the bank. At that point, I remember we have an investor that twice told us we were written off their books. I think he did that to take some of the pressure, right? That we had, but he meant it. And so we decided people say, okay, we're gonna go to the floor of car dealerships, try to compete with all the partnerships that are, and try to finance customers there. We didn't have any money. This is early 2018. The venture debt in Mexico was inexistent at that point. So most people at board didn't want that change. But at the end, they were behind us, and we were determined because it's you always got to go back to first principles. And there was a huge value to be offered there, even though it was going to be very hard to build, considering their circumstances that we hadn't lent directly before and we didn't have any money. So I went to live at car dealerships for more than a year. We didn't have much people on the team, so I would sometimes even use Microsoft Paint to draw the wireframes of how the platform would look, so to get feedback from the stakeholders at car dealers. And Fernando heroically went to knock on everybody's door in Mexico, and we talked to every friend, whoever was going to be able to provide us some money to be able to finance cars. A lot of people that were blessed that trusted us, and we were very responsible, disciplined. We told them what we were going to do. We understood the market from our broker days. Yeah, but it was super tough. Miguel, we didn't have, so we had to ask our top two key members to lower their salary in exchange for ESOP, for stock options. Back then, we didn't even have a stock options plan. So we couldn't, they accepted. They took a huge bet on us, and we didn't even have the ESOP set up. So we didn't have cash to pay lawyers to set it up. So it was just a variable from us. And some other key members, we asked another company to hire them temporarily for 6 months while we try to change things around. So we wouldn't lose them. They would work for this company, and 6 months after, they would get paid by them. And 6 months after, would have the option to bring them back. Fortunately, 3 months after that, we brought them back. Right? And after that, we worked really hard to make this where we got it today.
I'm guessing it was crucial to have a co-founder at that time.
Absolutely. Yes, it's sometimes I always think I talk to some friends that are solo founders and like, man, who do you talk to on these tough times? Yeah, Fer and I support each other a lot. I think we always see long term, and I think it's important to be positive, even though through these hard times. You gotta transmit that. It's not because it's not about stubbornness, Miguel. You it's more about understanding first principles. If you're going to offer value, if you're disciplined, we think that with discipline you can reach the impossible, right? So work hard, focus on it, and do not distract yourself with unimportant things. Do not distract yourself with what other people think. Focus, and if you're adding value and if you're conscious and you're doing it the right way, at some point it's going to turn.
How do you how do you two think about leadership within the company? I know you spend a lot of time developing your leadership philosophy. It would be good to learn a bit about it.
Thank you, Miguel. I think uh, we we can talk about leadership and culture a lot. Okay, so I'll try to briefly talk about leadership and then how our culture is it's different. So I think on the leadership side, we understand the effectiveness of being and promote and train our people to be servant leaders and selfless leaders. We strongly believe in that combination. And I think that leaders can be effective, can be very effective that way. Uh, Having said so, we also believe that true effective leaders are the ones that are authentic and true to themselves, that they're not trying to emulate other leaders, they're trying to be themselves and keep that consistency. And why that is important, it is because if you as a leader are who you are, again, consider your servant a selfless leader. Over time, that consistency, that stability builds a lot of trust in your team. And your team members are able to be much more effective because they can predict, they know how you're going to react, what you're going to expect from them. So we think, and this is part of our culture, that everybody is unique and that you got to explore and you got to try, that you got to learn to be who you are. And that will help you be a stronger leader. You don't have to be a copy of somebody else. It's good to learn from other leaders, but at the end, to be really effective, gotta come strong yourself. We were just a few months ago. We were at an event in which Reed Hastings, the co-founder and CEO of Netflix, came, and I loved something that he said. And he said it just resonates so much with us and the culture. And he said, to be a great leader, you gotta be a great person. You gotta become a great person. And so it's something that we strongly believe here in Nexu. And we push our leaders to be well-rounded. And the values that they project and that they're example to their team member are values that can help the team members even outside of Nexu, right? The idea is that these team members, these leaders, they understand that. I mean, in life, it's very important. Life is about the person that you become, not just what you achieve, not only what you achieve, which it matters what you're able to do, but you got to work on yourself.
And do you see that now in the culture every day of the company?
We try to we see I don't know why, but for example, there's a sense of unity and purpose at Nexu. Like this morning, I got a message from one of our most senior executives. That message only read, Abdon, we are a great team, and like a wink. I have no clue what he experienced. I haven't asked him. I just think, well, thumbs up. But those things start happening because when you build a unified culture with a common sense, it goes way past what Fer and I can design. People start taking it to a different level. So we've even had, like, in this room, remember, with like whenever we closed important rounds, some investors have come to visit us here and they met the team. We had more than one investor express, it's like, wow, there's a sense of something difference of unity, of like people really care about what they're doing here and what they're building that is distinctive, and it's just hard to put in words. It's you gotta feel it. And I think part of what we had to go through the first years made us force us to bring the right people to the team.
Yeah, I can confirm that sense of, it's not just unity, but that excitement, the energy that you hear when you enter the Nexu office.
Yeah, thank you.
Abdon, I know you're an avid reader. Are there any books that maybe you've read recently, maybe you've read a long time, that you find yourself talking about often, maybe recommending often? Maybe one or two.
Yeah, I think I tell readers to read Stillness is the kid from Rand Holiday. I strongly believe on the calmness of mind of decision making, to make fast decisions, to make thoughtful decisions. So I love that book from Ryan Holiday. I also love Obstacle is the Way as well. That really resonates as well with our culture. We intentionally go through the toughest because that's where we think we are going to make a meaningful difference. And also that book is really good and talks about that.
Awesome. Well, Abdon, it's always a pleasure learning from you and kind of seeing the amazing journey that Nexu is going through. And I'm so happy that you joined for this podcast. And I think the audience truly will benefit from hearing from you.
Thank you, Miguel. Really good questions. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope this is helpful.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this great episode with Abdon Nacif from Nexu. If you want more interviews, make sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. It helps and means a lot. And if you have any suggestions or thoughts about the show, just drop me a line on Twitter or LinkedIn. Signing off till next week, I'm your host, Miguel Armaza. The Fintech Leaders podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice.